Here we go, final result. Details, super details. So as you can see, probably explain this in every single video because it's so important. Painting looks difficult, but if you get a macro view here, it's really just what's going on? Oh, transparency. Bit. Tiny little shapes of color here. See that? It's a shape. Bam. Shape. Pretty straightforward. Shape. 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 Down the line. And they make a mosaic that turns into something that's realistic. So, shape really creates the bedrock of the piece. And this is what my friend Sikm showed me early on. He started out writing graffiti and his mind was really connected with shape and creating form from shape. And we used to do these drawings called brain funk where we'd stand around with wearing a sheet and just do like karate kick poses and, you know, do figure drawing in that way, like really funny poses. And it really ingrained in my head, all right, well, this is important. Shapes are important. Shapes are structure. And later when I found out about Johann Eiten and the Bauhaus and their whole philosophy regarding the fundamental sacred geometry and mathematics of shape, then it really clicked hard, and I was introduced into basically like the definition of what was already pretty intuitive. So I owe it to Sikm here for really introducing me to that philosophy early on. See that? Pretty sick, right? Sick. Bam. It's like a grid of shapes. So go back in time and erase all that. Get back to it. Bam, there we are. So here I was messing around with some color. I was gonna do the entire portrait in a particular color harmony. My three favorite colors is a triad here of yellow, violet, blue, green, and blue, violet. It's a triad, and I was just doing some color mixing here. So you get the three colors and you get the blend tool, and from that you can hold your finger down and select the color, and then from that you can create these amazing palettes. But since his face is pretty much like monochrome, like just three colors really, I just digressed from that. So I started out with this yellow and then moved it to this more reddish color, which is more accurate. First of all, the strategy was just to try to paint instead of outlining the shapes, really just lay down each shape as a strong color, if you will. And I think I abandoned that approach also, but I started off, you know, in that way with really trying to get simple flat shapes connected. Then for the shirt, just went a little wild and bam, hit that super curl, which I love to do, which is part of what's amazing with drawing and painting versus photography is you're seeing your subject, but you're making these wild departures based upon how you feel. So each color, each shape, everything is directly connected to an emotion. I mean, I'm not knocking photography, obviously it's amazing, but photography, it's kind of like you get the impression, click it, and it's frozen. But with painting, it's organic, it's an experience. You're traveling with your subject, and it's special in that way. Each teeny tiny shape is a direct reflection of your feeling with your subject and your response to your subject. So it's like pretty profound. As we roll along here, D. I'm playing around with the beard a little bit, starting to get some super basic shapes in, messing around with the tones. You see that there? It's like shape, 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 shape. So it's shape first, and then tone, and then color. I was giving an example in the other tutorial. It's like somebody tries to tell you that juggling is great and gives you 12 balls and says start juggling. It's like, this sucks. I hate juggling. But if they give you 2, you're like, okay, yeah, juggling is cool. If they give you 1, it's you flip it from one hand to the other. It's like, yeah, I can juggle. Okay, yeah, this is approachable, right? And then 2, it's like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And then eventually you juggle 12 balls, and that's the secret sauce to any kind of art form. And with drawing and painting, it's unfortunate because they want you to start juggling 12 balls, where actually drawing and painting, there's 3 separate art forms happening simultaneously. But unfortunately, as is the case with most teaching, teachers want to teach because they want validation or they want respect, etc. But they really haven't mastered their craft, especially in the art realm. My experience, and so people are like, I can't draw, I suck, like I can't do this, I'm no good. And it's unfortunate because if they would have just started with 1 ball or 2 balls, they would have been great eventually. So to connect that, drawing is juggling with 1 ball, and specifically not rendering, because when you start rendering and shading, that's actually phase 2. That's tone. Tone is basically white, gray, black, and the range of values in between. That's a whole second phase. That's like part 2. That's what you graduate to. So first, what we're doing is very simple shapes. Learning how shapes connect, the pattern of circles, triangles, and squares, and that's it. That's part 1. And I'm not even talking realism. I'm talking pure abstraction, just creating designs based on shape and getting confidence based on your designs. Like, oh, okay, like I start to understand the feeling of a circle. It's calm. The feeling of a triangle, it's exciting. The feeling of a shape, it's very stable. And playing with that interplay of shapes gives you this confidence and a design language where you can start looking at a face. Okay, yeah, the eyes are circles, the nose is a triangle, maybe the jaw is a square. You look at a car, you look at objects and shapes around you, and you start seeing that, whoa, like this whole fabric of reality is only 3 shapes. Like, this is actually pretty easy to see and to replicate. The training is really based upon, all right, well, how do I measure these shapes? And learning how to measure is really where the difficulty is, but it's not that difficult. With a little bit of training, you start to identify how to measure, and there's little tricks where you can, extend the line of one shape and see how it connects with the other. And it takes training just like anything else, but it's not like out of reach, that's for sure. So after you learn how to really understand the matrix of shape, then you move on to tone, which is basically distance, right? A 3D space. Like a black and white photo is an example of tone. It's where you're using shadows. That's a whole nother thing. Sharp edges and soft edges to use tone to really create the illusion of space. And then color is really easy. You just drop color into your tone and you're done. So that's a simplification, but a basic overlay of why people don't think that they can draw and don't draw is because it's taught in a way overcomplicated way. And I digress. I should probably just create a whole video for that and link it, and I will. But yeah, Sheldon Sikm was really instrumental in this whole shape philosophy, so I thought that a little explanation was due for this video. Alright, so moving on here. Just getting into some further details. Now this is important, this little red shape on the eye. There's always some red in the dark areas around the nose and the eye and the ear, so instead of just using a dark color, I always like to put in like a dark red around the nose right there, around the eye. Oh wow, look at all that work on the ear. Let's go back in time. So right there we're putting some yellow. You can see in the reference there's some yellow on the cheek area happening. Just really real flat layers, just thinking flat shapes, flat layers. Then that neck area obviously went much darker, and a darker value too, which is good because it gives more focus on the eye. Moving around a little bit. Oh, that happened quickly. Bam. So that's just me just having a lot of fun with shapes. Once you get a strong feeling of shapes, then it's like you have a freedom and a confidence and a looseness just to get savage and to know that it's going to be awesome because you understand shape and there's no fear. So that's the brilliance of really understanding shape, is you can be wild and you can be expressive, and you know what the shapes mean. They have a eternal definition, and you know that basically everything is abstract anyway, so it doesn't need to look perfect. And actually realism, in my opinion, is a bit of a step down from abstraction. If you don't understand abstraction, if you don't understand shape, and you don't understand the design elements of flow and focal point, if you don't understand these basic design elements in an abstract platform, it's almost like you haven't graduated to realism, and you don't understand realism, and your realism isn't going to be strong and like impactful because the understanding isn't there. So in my opinion, like, once you understand abstraction, then you're like a wizard. You're free just to do like amazing things and to be wild and expressive because you're confident and you understand the magic of what you're doing, which I think is the point of art forms, is to get to the point where you start to, where the magic has been passed to you as a disciple and you move on with it. So here we go, really basic. I'm thinking in shape, just in terms of flat shape, and even these transparent layers, I'm still thinking in flat shape. This transparency here, with Procreate, there's a transparency switch and a brush shape switch. So I have the transparency on like half, which lets me overlay this brush. It's the Nico roll, I think, which is kind of like obviously a textured brush, which I like a lot. You get those awesome beard textures and hair textures. So I only use one brush. I think I might have used an airbrush to blend. Sometimes I get in there with the blender and blend some of these colors together just to get like soft edges and to flatten out a spot that I don't want textured. So that's all, those two brushes. I put them at about half transparency. Sometimes I put it to full transparency. Sometimes I put it to like very low if I want just like a wash of color over something, or if I'm trying to get some like there we go right there, that line right there. Where's my thought? If I'm trying to get like a really soft blend or just an overlay, just turn the color slightly red or orange, just hit it with a really low transparency overlay. So right there, that line is an example of what I was talking about earlier with shapes and measurement. So basically putting in a line below the nose where the ear should be, and that's how you measure it. So you take one measurement and then you connect it to another measurement. So bam, that line is like, all right, that's where the bottom of the ear goes. Bam. And so yeah, you can take those lines and you could take like, the top of the nose, the top of the ear, and the trick for me for measuring is using diagonal lines and connecting one point to another point and another point to another point and another point to another point, and just intercrossing like a grid of diagonal lines really helps with proportion. It gets pretty easy when you get used to it. All right, so now we're getting to the ear. That tone right there, that value, pretty obvious. Needs to be a little more yellow, so it is. The ear, honestly, like, I probably would have done differently if I would have just taken some time and been patient. But yeah, I massaged it quite a bit because, you know, it's more work than any other area of the face. So I redid a lot of the areas, which I wouldn't necessarily do if I had more training and more patience, which I don't have a lot of. But in the end, if you're happy with the result, it's alright. It's a learning experience. That's kind of a cool, like, little color splash in there. And I'm putting those reds in of the nose and the eye that I was talking about. Keep that warmth in the dark areas is really important. Just kind of building shapes. I see everything in terms of shape. I really do. And whenever I blend, it's basically just to smooth out the border of two shapes that I'm seeing. I'm not thinking in terms of blending or rendering or scratching or making it realistic or 3D. No, I'm thinking in 2D, and I'm blending 2D shapes together, if that makes sense. So it's all like a pattern of two-dimensional shapes that have slight edge changes, and that's my viewpoint here. So I'm getting in that shadow of the ear. There we go. See, that's a brush. That's low transparency, just to get that nice shadow. Layering in some high key tones. A little more shadow on the cheek. Bam. Starting to mess with the neck a bit. Bam, that's cool. Getting that high key tone in there. Right there, that's the airbrush blend right there. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what to say. Ooh, I really like that mark on the ear. See, I mean, when you understand shape, you can do that. Just hit a shape and leave it because you know it's right, and you're not worried. There's no fear. Like, you understand shape so well that, like, you could literally do anything, and you understand simple is better. You don't need to render everything. Oh, does it look right? To me, if it doesn't look realistic, I still win because I still understand the shapes. I can still communicate what they are, and they mean something whether they look real or not. Like, a circle is relaxed spiritual energy. You know what I mean? A triangle is mental, it's the mind, it's synapses firing. These are ancient archetypes. It's exciting, it's energetic. The square is stable, strong, it's physicality. You know, so I can look in an abstract painting or an abstract drawing and explain the story as it moves along based upon these ancient archetypes. And when you understand abstraction to that level, like, realism isn't even realism. It's just a complete illusion. It's all abstraction that is the illusion of realism. So realism to me is like not precious. So I can do the chunkiest abstract painting, and if it looks real, great. But at the end of the day, I could break this down to like super chunk abstraction to where it barely looked real, and I'd be happy with it, and it would be amazing. And I could render it to where it's like completely realistic, all smoothed out, blasé, and like, okay, it's not better, you know, but it's founded on that chunky abstraction. So to drive the importance of shapes, so you can do that. You can hit that little shape in the nose and hit that little shape in the ear and leave it. All right, no problem. You know, confidence in abstraction. So we move along. I didn't really see that gray in the eye, but I put it in there because I knew it needed to be. There's a little bit of gray in there. I think if you look really close, there's I forgot to pause it. There's a little bit of gray in there. So I just like that. So we're messing around with the eye, and I think I got rid of the reference at that point because we're almost done. So let's get rid of that anyways. Oof, but you know what? There's a lot of cool stuff happening in the back. So yeah, as we move along here, let's just go straight to the beginning. clipboard. Alright, so now I'm thinking about the background, and I'm putting in a little more like splashes. So right here, it's really important for me when I'm thinking about the background to just be wild and savage and not precious. And to me, speed is really important. To feel a mark and put it in and leave it. And it's just the force and the primacy, if that's a word, I don't know the word for it, but just like the rawness of just like chuck of just strong, confident, fast marks, like a dancer. You can just imagine a dancer just like bam, whap, 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 just shifting around and making moves based on intuition. You know, to me, that's what's beautiful about art. Music too, just like boom, crack, boom, crack, boom, 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 crack, just like just like raw, primal moves, confident, strong, emotional, no hesitation, no fear. And to me, that's where art gets really, really dope. There's no fear. You're so confident on all the moves you're making, and they're so loaded with emotion, and you're expressing something as purely as possible. That's where art gets exciting. And so that's what I'm trying to do here at the end. I mentioned on the other video that John Singer Sargent, his philosophy was the first third is wild, the second third is calm, and the last third is wild. You know, or you could phrase it in a different way, you know, like the first third is, you know, immediate, the second third is more careful and measured, where you're getting your values and your shapes realistic if you're doing like a portrait like he would. And then the last third, you're putting wild style in it. You're moving off of your intuition, off of a transmission from another plane of existence. Like, you know, when you receive an idea artistically, like that's not yours. Like that's coming from outer space, you know. Like sometimes I'll be thinking of a musical idea and then hi-hats, like, you know, really loud at like 30 seconds. And I didn't think of that. I didn't think of like a top 10 list of how to use hi-hats and then pick one, you know, out of a measured list in my brain. It literally, like I'm doing something else. I'm working on like a melody, and then this idea comes in. Oh, do the hi-hats like that. So it's like you learn how to obey that. Like, okay, that's what's exciting. With art, it's an inner exchange where you realize you're receiving information from another dimension. That's the reason why a lot of people don't want to do art, is because they don't want that. They don't want to experience that there's information coming from another dimension. There's another entity communicating with them. Because most people in the material world, they're here because they want to dominate. They don't want to entertain the fact that there might be another creator or another person that has more power than them, you know. So it's a fundamental selfish outlook, which is why the world is fundamentally selfish. So that's why art is so important, because it snaps that wide open, and you're forced to communicate and to respond to another beautiful energy. It's the creator, the primal creative force. So but there's so much joy in that, you know, and it really opens up your spirituality to where you start listening to your consciousness and your intuition. And if you follow that, then your life just gets less and less selfish and more service oriented and more joyful. So artist recovery, to me, the whole process, the whole point of it is to offer that beauty and offer people that experience. And, you know, it's like to let the experience lead the way, you know, to where it's not forceful, to where like you might be eating Wonder Bread, you know, processed Wonder Bread, and then you start to eat home-baked honey wheat bread, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna start eating home-baked honey wheat bread, because it's just like obviously just so much more delicious. The crust is flaky and textured, and it's just a completely superior experience, you know. So I hope the artist recovery becomes that for people, where they can enter into this experience and it brings value into their life. So as we move forward here, bang bang. Oof, I like that. See, bam, that dark red was just confident. Let's put that in. The ear isn't perfect, but like I'm saying before, with abstraction, it doesn't need to be perfect. If you like it and it indicates a feeling you have about this person, that's cool. That's it. That's all it needs to be. So I think I'm carving away here a bit, the nose. I carved too much from the reference picture, so I actually looked at my phone and realized I carved off like the top of his nose. So here we go. Oof. There we go. On that hair. And the other reference, he's got hair dangling and jangling down from the back of that wild mane, wild Leo mane. So that all that scratching, it's like cha cha cha, you know, just wild. Throwing it in there. And now we're done. So now I'm going into the background, and this is all completely freestyle. Like, I'm not thinking about any of this. I'm just reacting. So bam, sick. That's his name. Clack, clack, clack. Just like 4 shapes. 1 shape for the S, 1 shape for the I, 2 shapes for the K. And just really improvising here. Creating an aura for my boy. Straight to the heavens, as it is. I'm putting a little bit of a super transparent wash over his head, just to indicate that the light is basically engulfing his entire forehead. It's not coming from behind, it's actually like affecting, the light is reflecting all over his forehead because it's coming from that source. And playing around with some tone contrast to highlight the focal point. I'm actually erasing this super transparent layer. You can get some, you know, some cool patterns, cool texture effects by taking a layer then erasing it. So it's like a negative drawing instead of positive drawing. Taking down that shape with an eraser. I just use an eraser, and the pencil is touch sensitive, so just kind of applying gradual, less pressure into that shape to create that effect. And then getting some counterpoints at the bottom, I think in the face there. What do we do? Kind of just playing around, some last minute touches on the nose. I really like that mark right there against the cheek. It didn't need to be there, I didn't see it, I just like it, so there it goes, it stays. And that's how it works. If I like it, it stays. The end. Alright. Yeah. Cropped the bottom there. Brought some shapes on the right. I think that's about it. Mess around with a little bit more detail in the face. Playing around with subtleties. So for me, like, the subtleties are important, you know, the map of tone, making sure that the focal point, the flow is right, and it's balanced, making sure the balance is perfect. So sometimes I fuss around with the tiniest little things in the world. Oh, that's that's funny. That's what I did just in the beginning here. So that's the end right there. So I'm fussing around with like these 2 little guys. You can see it at the upper right. I'm like, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. Got to be perfect. And I think I got rid of him in the end anyways. Oh, and I moved the position of the body around a little bit. And there you go. Really happy with the composition. I like that that light tone at the left behind Sikm. It's a really nice support. And yeah, I like what's happening in terms of everything, the texture and the shape and the tone. So that's it. Yeah, I hope this was inspiring and informative. And stay tuned for the next tutorial, and thank you for watching.